All right. So, hello everybody. I'm Ernestine Lyons, and I'm the proud founder of Ling Global. So, Ling Global gives you an opportunity to connect with new cultures, learn new languages, to go anywhere, be anything, and be a global citizen. So, as a part of this series, I have, sat down with in our pandemic world and pandemic life, been able to, have so, in our pandemic world, we have actually been able to be afforded the opportunity to meet with people from around the world, around the country, and just kind of have candid conversations around language learning, travel. And, I wanted to expand this series to introduce Elle Charisse. And she is the host of Speaking in Tongues, or the Speaking in Tongues podcast. And the podcast is a conversation that she has with multilinguals, and she talks about her language loves and the love of learning languages, and a little bit of travel. So, it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can find her out there on Instagram, Speaking in Tongues Pod, and then also check her out. I'm going to put her a link tree description in the link below. So please do follow her on all the socials and listen and subscribe to the podcast. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for that introduction, Ernestine. Hi, everyone. I'm Elle Charisse. As Ernestine said, I'm the host of Speaking Tongues podcast. And I started this podcast in 2020, January 2020. I've always loved languages, learning them, speaking them, and I've always been fascinated by other people who speak languages. So I was really curious to know like how other people were able to learn, and I kind of recognized my own deficiencies with learning and trying to get to fluency with the language. So I've always, I started the show out of a curiosity of just wanting to know how other people learn languages, and it's evolved a bit into um, wanting to know how other people live their lives around the world, and just it's become a cross-cultural exchange.
Awesome, awesome. And I do love, cross-cultural exchanges, and, we kind of bonded just because I
Yeah,
was talking about the polyglot conference or something. And then we were just talking about, being Black in the space of, multilingual polyglots and people
right.
who love to learn languages. And then also this wonderful sort of explosion of Black travel enthusiasts that you're seeing, like Travel
Absolutely.
Noir, and Catch Me If You Can. That's
Love
actually
her.
Jessica Mbongo. She's from Detroit. And
That's
so
right. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, I mean, it's there's just so much excitement out there, that I just kind of wanted to kind of connect with you and be able to learn more about you and the space. And I think you also mentioned that you were involved with, or you had found out about Black Girls Learn Languages, and I connected with Shahida on this channel, so you can check out that video. I'll link it here as well.
Yeah, she's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but that's super, super cute, and amazing that, like, it was like a curiosity that kind of led you to, this new world of, did you in high school have any type of interest in language learning, or were languages kind of compulsory?
Yeah, so I'm in New York City, born and raised New Yorker, and I um, the first language that I started learning in junior high school was Spanish, and I think we had it like sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. Um, didn't learn a thing. I say this like all the time on my show. Like it just wasn't a very you know holistic, comprehensive experience learning Spanish. When I got to high school, I had an opportunity to learn Latin because I was in the honors program. So I took 4 years of Latin in high school. And at first, it was like, ugh, I don't want to learn Latin. This is stupid. But then after maybe 2 years of it, I really fell in love with it because I was able to see the connection that Latin has to other languages and how it even influenced, words in the English language as well. And that I think was really the beginning of my curiosity about the world, and not about the world, but about languages in general. And, seeing that connection was just so um, it was so powerful for me. It really changed my life. And after high school, when I went to college, I had every intention of studying Latin. I wanted to be like a classicist, um, and I got to I got to university, and I honestly I got some bad advice. I had an advisor tell me like Latin is worthless and it's useless and you're not going to need it, so don't waste your time. Just go ahead and take Italian because it's the closest thing to Latin. Um, Turned out to not be bad advice because I ended up taking Italian for 2.5, 3 years. I fell in love with it, totally loved it. Um, and then I took 1 year of French to kind of, fill out my credits for graduation when I was in college. So that's kind of like the trajectory of my my intense language study.
All right, all right. So you fell in love with a dead language. That's definitely interesting. And I feel like it's one of the ones that I don't hear that often. I've maybe heard, some people kind of interested in classical Greek, but then also, Greek is still spoken, of course, in Greece.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely interesting. And, I'd have to say that maybe it wasn't much of a stretch, but you'd be surprised at what I don't know. I feel like I've also taken that kind of approach where I felt like something I was interested in, particularly a language, was so esoteric. I'm like, what kind of career am I going to make out of this? This is just a
Right.
hobby, and it's potentially going to be an expensive one if I major in this, which I don't
Exactly.
know. More and more, I begin to think that like I double majored, but especially in undergrad, I'm like, part of my major was more of an expensive hobby. but but I digress. So, okay, you talked about having this language learning experience and it kind of led you to take on different things in college and get exposed to different things. And so as you are now steeped in the language learning world a little bit more, what what degree of fluency do you have with your language loves? And let's hear more about what your language loves are.
Oh boy. Okay.
And
So
because there's the International Language Roundtable, and then there's the international kind of like, people are just like, I'm at so and so level, and I'm like, which ones
right.
do we use?
Right, right. And I think it's really funny because before I really got into this language world, the whole like B1, B2, C1, C2, like that meant nothing to me. So I just kind of gauged like how fluent I was, like when I traveled, if I could get my point across and if I could understand other people, like that meant more to me than actually putting a number and a letter to it. Um, so I find it really funny in the community how, people, not everybody, but some people hold on to that. You know, they really hold on to that, and it has so much value to them. I think, you know, my love's Italian is probably the biggest one because I think that was the first language that even though I had Latin, like you said, it's a dead language. So I didn't have any conversational ability with Latin. It was more a translational ability. Um, but Italian was the first language where I could actually communicate with Italian speakers. I could actually feel confident and feel, proud of communicating with Italian speakers. And I just love the way the language sounds. I love the words in Italian, and I love, obviously, the culture is amazing, and the food, and all that good stuff. Um,
Yeah, they don't call them romance languages for nothing. It is definitely is like, oh my gosh, you hear Italian and your heart melts. And then like all the food is so good. And, but honestly, yeah, but I have not been to Italy. So I do envy that, yeah, for other folks.
I love it. And the first time I lived in Italy for a brief period of time, and it was like shortly after college, after graduating from college. And when I first got there, I had my textbook classroom Italian, and then I got there and I was like, "Oh my God, like what are people saying and doing?" And then it took me about maybe 2 months to be able to comprehend, and then be able to respond to people. So it's like it's been Italian for me just feels comfortable. It feels like a really comfortable, it feels comfortable in my mouth, to use the words and the sounds and things like that. But I always wanted to learn French since I was a very little girl. Like I was just always in love with French. And I remember my grandmother telling me, um, when I was very young, she would tell me, French is the international language, and you have to, if you speak French, you can go anywhere in the world. And since I just always knew, Ernestine, that I was going to see the whole world. I was like, I have to learn French because, my grandmother told me that this is the language that's going to get me all around the world. Um, and it's been hard. It's been hard learning. I'm learning, I'm like relearning now, probably for like the fifth time. I keep going over the same, you know,
That plateau, right? Right.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, okay. And I feel like I have that struggle too, especially with Chinese, because
Mm,
especially, you said you were, living in some of these places where like, the languages are spoken, but then you hit a wall, you go back to, I'm gonna refresh chapter 2. And then 6 months later, let me go back over chapter 2. So yeah, yeah.
exactly. So right now, currently, I'm actually, for the past maybe 4 months, I've been studying French and Italian at the same time. So
Ooh,
it's
nice, nice.
been, so far I've managed to keep them separate, and I'm not, substituting words in French when I should be using them in Italian and vice versa. But that's what I'm currently working on now. And I've kind of decided, like, let me focus on this for a minute before I jump to the next language I want to learn, and the next language I want to learn, and all that good stuff.
So, that actually just makes me dive right into another question. Two questions really. One, do you confuse your languages? Do you like mix them up, or, then we'll delve right into the other question around language tips, because
Mm,
especially for people studying multiple languages at the same time, people will always say like, oh, well, study one at a time. But, that's never really been me. I'm just like, if I'm studying Russian for too long, I feel like Chinese is going to get jealous. And so I have to, get back to that. So yeah, yeah.
and
What?
you feel like you deteriorate really quickly when
Right.
you turn your back on one, and then, you know so your question is.
So the first question is like, do you confuse your two languages that you're studying simultaneously? Especially considering that they're both Romance languages and they have
Right,
similar roots.
right. The short answer is yes, I do. And I I'm trying not to, but what I've noticed, and I'm actually kind of proud that I'm able to do this, is like I catch myself right away. So there's times where, like, so if I'm saying something in Italian and I want to say but la 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 la, I would say ma blah 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 blah. If I'm saying it in French, it's me such and such and such. And that's the word that I notice I hesitate on all the time. So I'll be talking to my language partner in French, and then I'll interject in Italian. Like my interjections is
Are
what I get
always, or
confused.
transition words,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
kind of rely on them. And so you just feel so comfortable, and that it's you're never going to forget the complicated word in the target language.
right,
Right.
right. So, um, but it's getting better, and I haven't had a moment yet where I'm just going off in a completely different language, and then I realized, oh shoot, like I should have been speaking the other one because this person doesn't understand. So, so far so good. As far as advice, um,
Your 3 tips for
my
like
3 tips.
studying 3 languages at the same time.
What's working for me right now is I compartmentalize. So I have 2 days a week that I focus on, uh, Monday to Friday. I mean, 2 days that I work on one language, which is French, because that's my weaker one. So I spend Monday and Friday with French, and then Saturday is like my study day for French, and then Italian is my Wednesday is my Italian day. So I take maybe Tuesday and Wednesday, maybe Thursday if I need it, and I study that. So I would definitely give that advice. Like if it's, especially if it's, I don't know if someone's doing like 4 languages, but if it's just 2 languages, definitely switch and try to keep them as far apart on the calendar as possible. Um, I also would say, um, it's a good idea, and I'm not following this advice right now because I know myself and I feel confident that I can do it. But I think if you have any doubt about studying 2 at the same time, maybe give more time to the weaker one first. Maybe give yourself a head start with the weaker one, and then, you know, start adding a little bit at a time with the stronger one. Because if your mind can always come back to the stronger one, then you have to build up that weaker muscle to kind of, compete. um and I would say the third thing, oh my gosh, just have fun with it. Just have fun with it, because you're going to make mistakes anyway in any language, and do the best you can. um I think like, for me, it's hard to, like, it's hard to give advice, right? Because what works for me may not work for somebody else. But the biggest thing that I've tried to tell myself in the past 4 or 5 months is just chill out, have fun, you know, do the best you can.
Right. And with languages, especially for us like multilinguals and polyglots and, aspiring multilinguals and polyglots, it's like, I don't know, unless you're trying to, get a job with the State Department. Like, for a minute there, I was really, really focused, hyper focused on Russian because the US embassy and the State Department, I really was trying to go for those jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
Russian was the language that I was really pushing towards, making sure that I had strength, and I hired a tutor, and I was spending hours and hours with Russian. And but I was neglecting my other ones. And as soon as it didn't end up working out, but as soon as it was over, I mean, it's not like I just kind of completely gave up on one, but I realized, I'm like, okay, well, I gotta make sure that, so, but I do think that it's helpful, kind of going back and revisiting, like you said, but then also to have
Mm.
fun. And sometimes it's almost like building a muscle, and I'm really into weightlifting lately. So I'm going to use this analogy of like, okay, yeah, I just bought 20-pound weights because I had been using the 15s and kind of the 10s and relying on those. But it's like you're like the way that we were talking about plateauing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to really be able to step up to the next level, and it's going to
Yeah.
be uncomfortable. You're going to have those brain melting moments where, you're speaking in Russian and you can't find your words, or you're using your, kind of transitionary words. Or your filler words, like in Chinese, you say 这个 or 哪个 when you're trying to say that or this. But it also is a 这个东西是很好的. Where you just like, I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
that thing, and that's kind of your filler word.
Right.
And I feel that once you get used to those, you kind of hold on to them.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I digress. The whole point is I love hearing like somebody else's perspective. And I think this is what we can all learn from each other in the polyglot community, is the
Yeah.
things that work for you, because maybe somebody else didn't think of it that way. And
Right.
you shed some light on something that we can do. And also that pressure, especially the internet pressure, which
Mm-hmm.
is like, no, I have to be, especially with the levels. I have to be able to
Right.
test at this level.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. And I think that before I started the show, before I started speaking to people, I was very focused on fluency. I was very focused on, like, if I'm not fluent in French, if I'm not fluent in Italian, I'm a waste. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point if I can't be fluent? And I've really relaxed in the past year. It's just like, I want to have fun with it. I'm not, like you said, I'm not looking for a State Department job. It's not really, I mean, it can affect future employment, but it's not something that right now, it's something I want to do, something that makes me happy. And I have a hard time, or I have had a hard time with, these, like, be fluent in 90 days type of things. And it's like, not only, I
There's
mean,
so many of them behind me right now. Like,
there's
get
so
off your
many.
car, and like it's just a whole stack
there's
of them.
there's so many, and I definitely think it's a good idea to use, your commute to study, or to use your downtime to study, or find different ways to integrate your language into your routine, into your life. It makes sense. But the promise of fluency in 90 days, it's like, come on. It's There's no quick fix, and
Very
I
unrealistic, and it just kind of
yeah,
makes people give up. It's just,
exactly.
going back
It's
to dieting. And
discouraging.
it's like, if it's too difficult,
Hmm.
then you are going to quit. You have to make
Right.
it something that's accessible, easy, and fun. To me,
Right.
languages were always fun. And I think, my Chinese versus my Arabic was so much better because Arabic was a chore for me, especially
Mm.
in the way that my university set it up. And it was just like it was fun to go into like our Chinese classes for like, or even like Confucius Cafe where they'd have tea and then they'd have like Chinese food and different ways for you to experience the culture, and then
Yeah.
have conversation practice as opposed to drilling the verbs for Arabic and like writing it out a million times and then having the
Right.
professor yell at you. And I maybe it was just the way that it was set up at my university, and it just kind of was like day and night. And I'm like, okay, one language is so much more fun to study than the other. So, but like you said, going back to that pressure,
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that.
right?
I'm trying to avoid that. And I, like I said, I don't want to put it on myself to feel like if I'm not fluent, then I've wasted my life. I've wasted all this time. It's like I can communicate, people can understand me, and I'll get better in time. So
Right, exactly. All right. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for being a part of this. And this is just like the first of like mini series that, and we're definitely going to be talking more, and doing more
absolutely.
collaborations. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And thank you for watching out there, in YouTube world, for joining me, and looking forward to just kind of exploring more with languages and helping you all get to learn more from different perspectives and meet different people in the polyglot community, and hopefully when things open up again we can meet again at the polyglot conference one day, and until then, au revoir and 再见 and let's see, до свидания and مع السلامة. And then for you, what are your greetings?
I would say, well, first, thank you for having me. And I would also say ciao and au revoir. A bientôt.
Nice, nice. Okay, now, one thing we didn't do, introduce ourselves in our language loves. Okay, starting with you in Italian and then French.
In italiano mi chiamo Elle. Uh, oh my God. Un, ah, oh my God, I'm blanking on the word. ho fatto il podcast, si chiama Speaking Tongues, è disponibile a Apple Podcast e anche Spotify. In francese, in French, oh my gosh. I don't think I could do this in French yet.
Love it. Or just basic introductions, because I was surprised when I heard you, like, I don't know Italian that well, but I heard you say, subscribe to my podcast. Like, what?
That's the most important thing, right? Je m'appelle Elle Charisse, et j'ai fait un podcast s'appelle Speaking Tongues, available Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. So yeah, I can't do that in French yet. My French is not.
Awesome, awesome. But you know what? Like, I feel like it's always these experiences where you're just like, okay, I'm never gonna forget that word, and I'm gonna come back to it, and I'm gonna be able to like rock it out of the park.
Oh yeah, ask me again in 2 days, and I
Exactly.
will have it.
Yep, yep. Okay. So let's see. For me, I'm going to start with, okay, I don't know anything about how to say anything about podcasts or anything, because I feel like when I was the most active in my language learning, like in the critical years, None of these kind of things existed. Nobody really
Nope.
listened to podcasts. This was like 2011.
Yeah.
So those things were kind of just like very nuanced and just taken off. So, okay, let's see. По-русски, in Russian. Меня зовут Эрнестин. Я изучаю русский язык в Санкт-Петербурге государственном университете в год 1900. No, I can't even say the year. But I was going to say in 2012. But, you know, раньше я жила в Китае, я изучаю китайский язык, и сейчас я работаю в бизнес и государственные, wait, no, международные отношения. So I said, hi, my name is Ernestine Lyons. I studied at St. Petersburg State Economics University in St. Petersburg, Russia in 2011. Or no, it was 2015. That's why I can't, because I knew there was a Piat in there. And I'm like, Piat shouldn't be in there if I'm thinking of 2011, but it was 2015. And I also before lived in China where I studied Chinese. And right now I work in business and international relations. Okay, 在汉语，在汉语是我的名字是李艾斯，我学习汉语大概10年半了，不是我忘了很多，这个我学习在华中科技大学，在武汉，现在我工作在政府, I forget how to say civil servant. But okay, I said my name is Ernestine Lyons. I studied at Huazhong University in Science and Technology. I said I forgot a lot of words in Chinese. And I think I said I studied Chinese for about 10 years. 10 and a half years, 10年半.
Wow.
And then I said, right now, 现在我工作在政府. Right now I work in government, and I wanted to say I'm a civil servant. But that was the thing. I learned that term because I kept saying it, and then like,
Yeah.
Oh, and there we go. I'm just throwing out a Chinese word. Like, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Okay. 对呀. All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of this. And we might start this segment off with our language introductions. So. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elle. And it has been a pleasure talking with you and connecting with you. And we're definitely connecting more. So
yeah, please come on my show and talk about Russian and Chinese.
Absolutely. I haven't talked about them in so long. Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
All right. Well, thank you and have a great one. Stay safe.
You too.